Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man, and welcome to the second iteration of the StarGate Greatest Villains tournament. Full credit goes to Joseph Malazzi, also known as Ed Baron Destructo on Twitter, and yes, I will continue to call it Twitter because reasons. Um, for for coming up with the original concept. However, if you'll recall in last week's video where I went through the where I went through the entire bracket and discussed discussed my desired outcomes and the points where my opinions diverge that of the uh, from that of the larger Stargate fandom. I did mention that I find the seating to be a little bit to be somewhat off, and for that reason, I thought I would redo the tournament, taking taking those same villains that Joseph himself has chosen, except rethinking the matchups just a little. Uh, After I was actually, funnily enough, after I was done with that tournament, I started thinking, what would this tournament actually look like if I did the seeding from scratch? And while I have a concept for that, I'm not gonna tackle that anytime soon. I might do that eventually. For now, there is this tournament bracket in front of me and in front of all of you, and I thought I would go through it and see, who would win, who would win in all situations. Starting here in this area, first matchup is between Michael and Nirti. Uh, I do, I do have to confess my only point of reference for Nirti when I made this bracket was that one episode where it was showcased that she had done human experimentation in order to give the Goa'uld more powerful or more physically capable uh, host bodies, and the obvious parallel was Michael, because he came into the show as a subject of experimentation himself, even twice, and it is that experimentation that led to him being uh, shunned from general society and creating his own collective, even if also through human experimentation, which, yeah, not exactly, yeah, did not exactly uh, make him seem particularly, uh, you know, made him come across as hypocritical, but it also made him, interesting as a loose cannon faction, and arguably the arguably the best villain of Stargate Atlantis. Whereas Nirti, even though she has more appearances than that one episode I mentioned as a system lord, if I recall correctly, her actual legacy is still not particularly noteworthy or not particularly noteworthy or memorable, especially when compared to Michael. So for that reason, it is Michael who progresses. Next up, an all Atlantis matchup. We got Colia versus Todd. Uh, both of these are somewhat interesting because they started out more as background uh, or because within their organizations they are more background or lieutenant figures, but but they are able to uh, work within, but they have been able to work within their respective systems in order to gain a position of prominence, and ultimately making them perhaps the most important villains of their respective factions. And I have to say, uh, I'd say while perhaps in a purely physical matchup, Todd, depending on how satiated he is, he would defeat Kolya. I ultimately see him more as an antagonist rather than an outright villain. Kolya, by contrast, has a more uh, uh, has been a more active threat. Uh, Todd uh, wielded some powerful threats in the past, but I still think Kolya holds the edge in terms of determination and not necessarily the threat level, but the menace level he possesses. So it's admittedly a bit of a close one, but I think Kolya edges edges past in the in the second match. Next up, we've got Replicator versus Cowan. This matchup I came up with because of one thing that Replicator actually said in the in the episode she was introduced. Namely, she says that all humans desire power, but but many of them refuse to grasp the opportunity to take it for for whatever reason they select. And to some extent, Cowan is actually the embodiment of that. Not because he, or perhaps no, he's not really an embodiment. He's to some extent a reversal of that, because he does utilize a certain, he does utilize a justification to grasp power, but his hold on power is perhaps a little bit too. It's perhaps a little bit too fragile, too too doubtful. He basically took it on in order to in order to grant himself a level of certainty, and it is that search for certainty that places him in opposition to the Atlantis crew as well. So these are they're interesting characters in terms of their dualities and their relationships to power. However, overall, when it comes to their characterizations and the threat or personal menace level that they bring, I pretty much have to go with Replicator here, because let's face it, by the end of her story, Replicator was the biggest threat of the second most powerful villainous faction of the entire franchise. Cowan wasn't even the biggest threat of the second most powerful Atlantis faction. So, yeah, Replicator definitely takes it. Next up, we've got Anubis versus Sokar, two deities of the maybe not necessarily underworld, but afterlife. And I'll admit Sokar had a little bit more of a backing in terms of his in terms of how he was established and built up throughout the series until his appearance. given he was a Satan stand-in. But ultimately, when time came for him to actually show up in the narrative, he was outstaged pretty quickly. Anubis, by contrast, introduced a new dimension of conflict within the series, and expanded the threat level of the show to a sizable degree. And yeah, that alone pretty much guarantees that he will move ahead. So we've got Anubis moving ahead to the quarterfinals. Next up, on the other side of the bracket, we have Baal versus Osiris. Yeah. Joseph Malazzi's bracket initially had Harry Mayborn here, but I swapped him out for Osiris because I think Osiris has a more active villainous presence, and also there's more of a direct conflict between her, him. I'm not exactly sure anymore, and and the SJ1 crew, particularly Daniel. Nevertheless, it is still it is still Ball who represented the biggest threat among the Goa'ulds for the second half of the season. So for that reason, Ball makes it makes it ahead to the quarterfinals. Next up, we have the one matchup in Joseph's bracket that I also preserved: Senator Kinsey versus Hathor. Both of them have a personal fixation with Stargate Command, and both of them seek to eliminate it through their own means. For my money, I have to say, just like I said in last week's video, Senator Kinsey makes it makes it through to the next round. He represented a more direct and more complex menace and threat level than Hathor, and could more effectively present a threat towards the SGC. For that reason, he moves on. Next up matchup, we got Apophis versus Fifth. Two villains who to some extent had to rise from the ashes of their their initial defeat. There was actually a joke about Apophis not staying dead. It ultimately took like a trip to another galaxy and a new variant of replicators to finally defeat him. And Fifth himself is actually a replicator, and he holds somewhat of a unique position among the replicator villains, because he because he is seen as emotional, weak, and human, only to then eventually outstage all of them. Still, when it comes to the threat level that a character poses, as well as their relationship to the main characters, my vote for who should make it through is, I misspelled that, Apophis. I'm sorry, he's just a better villain. Fifth has a more interesting concept behind him, but Apophis actually fulfills the potential granted to him. And now, final matchup: Adria versus Oberov. Both of them enemies of the ancients that Stargate more or less inherited. That the Stargate Command more or less inherited due to their position of prominence within the galaxy, or galaxies, so to speak. And and they both approach the menace the ancients presented them through different means. It could be argued that Oberov is very much a vindictive child, someone who sees himself as being abandoned by his creators, who and therefore stands as the leadership of a weapon gone rogue. By contrast, Adria pretty much exists, has been created as a weapon aimed against the ancients, and in order to satisfy that condition, she very much works to she very much has a level of influence that she tries to peddle in order to make her. She very much does that primarily by peddling influence, by using arguments, and by by commanding leadership in a more human manner. That being said, she is by no means opposed to using more physical means, and she is also very effectively capable of employing those. And when it comes to the relationship and connection between these characters and and the threat levels they pose. The winner is ultimately, I think ultimately stands out quite clearly. It's Adria. Okay, and that was it. That was the round of 16. Now let's go to the quarterfinals, starting with another All Atlantis matchup: Michael versus Kolia. Both of these guys started out more as background figures, more or less, as in Michael wasn't exactly a leader among the Wraith, or more precisely, he wasn't a grunt, but he wasn't really a commander, so to speak, either. He was more of a scientist among them, someone who utilized the leadership other people presented. However, when the necessity came for him to step up as a leader, he very effectively did so, and very much threatened the entire Pegasus galaxy. Kolia, by contrast, could not hope to do that. His only hope to do so was to manipulate Atlantis into doing so. And while he has been able to do some he had to do some underhanded tactics in order to actually in order to do so, and he is quite effective at attacking them on a personal level. Ultimately, I have to say Michael has been able to do the same, and the threat level that he poses is more meaningful. So, for that reason, the first character to make it to the semifinals is Michael. Next up, we've got a matchup between Replicator and Anubis. Both of them, funnily enough, were defeated by ancient weaponry, if I'm not mistaken. No, wait. Anubis was actually defeated by an ancient himself. He wanted to use an ancient weapon to secure his victory. Funnily enough, the same weapon that destroyed Replicator, but was ultimately prevented from doing so by the ancients, or by one ancient in particular, Oma. Replicator, by contrast, as I said, she was pretty much the leader of the most powerful villain faction at the time. And pretty much outdid anything that to the extent that she had to force a cooperation between humanity and between the good guys and the Goa'uld, at least for a time. And again, I think the threat level and the relationship that she presents to the to the main cast is more meaningful than what Anubis did. So for that reason, I am ready to say that Anubis doesn't make it any further. And do I put yeah, okay, I'm going with Replicator here. Good. Moving to the other side, we got Ball versus Senator Kinsey. Both of them have a complex relation with the SGC, as in Ball doesn't necessarily want to outright destroy them, not all the time. Senator Kinsey is more interested in either shutting them down or taking over the entire operation himself. He wants to, in essence, he wants to control or have influence over the power that they themselves are opening up, which ultimately backfired against them, because of course it did. Ball, by contrast, is the kind of character who always, who always had a lot of power, and even in changing volatile times, he has been able to maneuver himself strategically to the point where he was, where he effectively became the last Goa'uld standing, and there is a reason where even though there were even more, even though there were more powerful villains, facing off against him, he still maintained a solid presence and a solid presence within the actual narrative. Not to mention that the way that his the relationships he was able to, or maybe not relationships, but connections he built up to the uh, members of the SGC, particularly SG1, were were quite interesting and quite noteworthy as well. So for that reason, the third semifinalist in my in my bracket is Ball. Moving on to the last quarterfinal, we have Apophis versus Adria. Now, I will say this is actually a pretty tough, matchup, because on one side we have a character who in many ways defined what a villain is for this franchise, and who was a major threat towards StarGate Command and ultimately even Earth for for the first 4 seasons of the show, compared to a character who threatened the entire galaxy, even if only for 1 season, but still required a direct-to-DVD sequel movie in order to be defeated. And by the time that movie came around, she was basically the most powerful villain, or the most powerful character, period, in the entire franchise. So, yeah, this is very much a pick your poison kind of situation, because the sorry, it's been a long day. This is the 4th video I'm doing today. It's a lot of talking. Yeah, I'm doing the Archer thing. Anyway, as I was saying, we got the first villain versus one of the last villains. And in terms of threat level, Adria is clearly the superior choice. In terms of the menace they present, they might be about the same. But really the decisive aspect of their the matchup is really the personal connection here. And while I could argue, I can actually see arguments that Apophis has has a meaningful direct connection to the members of the SGC. I ultimately think that that's not enough to get one over Adria, who who does still very much have that have that level of charisma, and have that level of direct menace in relation to the SGC, from not just through her relationship to Valmal Duran, who becomes a part of the team as more or less a mascot, but also in the ways that she connects or relates to the or parallels the other characters, and what it is that she brings to them. So for that reason, I'm sorry to say, Apophis, you're going down. Adria, you're moving up as the 4th semifinalist. Now, time for the semifinal. We got Michael versus Replicarter. Michael, as I said, ended up being perhaps the biggest or most noteworthy villain of Stargate Atlantis. Even though even though he wasn't the uh, final boss of the show, he was still noteworthy. He was still gained enough uh, uh, power and influence to to become a threat to every other faction within the within Atlantis, and he did that through sheer tenacity and his and his own ability to uh, to leverage knowledge and other people. So yeah, he is very much and yeah, he very deservedly is one of the best villain characters I could think of. Replicarter, I have to say she has had some she has had some pretty interesting capabilities so far. As I said, she was the leader of of the second most powerful faction in the uh, entire franchise. Uh, and she had some interesting connections and reports with the main cast. But ultimately I think Michael edges her out simply because he has a stronger connection and perhaps the more compelling personal narrative. So first finalist, shifting this over here, is going to be Michael. Second semifinal, Ball versus Adria. To some extent, this matchup already happened in the in the show itself, and I'm pretty sure I said that in last week's video as well. So I'm not gonna spend too much time. I'm trying not to spend too much time rehashing the arguments I made in that video. And all I can say is that while Adria, at one point at least, arguably had the raw strength, when it comes to a lot of other aspects, I'm gonna say Ball at the very least matches her. So for that reason, when it comes to his personal story and his personal menace level, threat level, and etc., I'm gonna say Ball is the second finalist. And now here we are, final matchup: Michael versus Ball, the the two most noteworthy threats of their respective settings. And I have to say, while I and I think it helps to look at them, look at them comparatively. When it comes to their personal arcs, I think Michael edges out Ball in terms of tenacity. However, when it comes to strategy and the threat level that results therefrom, as well as the ways in which these villains can challenge their respective heroes, I think I can pretty confidently say Ball has the edge. In a physical fight, it would be hard to say who would win. Probably Michael, because he has actually been forced to garner some experience. Not to mention, he is one of the few characters who managed to defeat Ronan in a hand-to-hand matchup. So ultimately, I think the final point would be the threat level they present, and how exact would be the maybe the threat level they present, or the relationship that they have with the main characters. Michael very much had a fixation with the Atlantis crowd, given they are the ones who have taken everything away from him and forced him to become, this tenacious monster that ultimately ended up being the boogeyman of the entire Pegasus galaxy. And and aside from that, he has his he has other reasons why he, why he would, attack them. Basically, to have them as fodder for his experiments, which is, which is an interesting background to consider. When it comes to Ball, he doesn't really have that direct personal connection, but he does have a level of playful sadism to him, and combine that with his with his arsenal and his strategic prowess, he has been able to challenge the SGC, which I'll remind you is a is a somewhat more sizable organization in a lot of unique and intriguing ways. You never knew what to expect when it came to when it came to fighting Ball. It could be it was never a walk in the park, and not to mention he has been quite capable of adapting has been more capable of adapting to the strategies of his opponents, be they other system lords, be they the Ori, be they the replicators, even if it includes the SGC or the Topra, he is he is in many ways the best villain, because he is a strong villain because he has been capable of countering so many other factions, and always holding an edge. For that reason, I proclaim the winner to be Ball. So yeah, unsurprising. Unsurprising. This guy wins this thing again. Make of that what you will. He's just that good. What can I say? But yeah, that was my look. That was my presentation into what it is that makes the StarGate villains noteworthy and interesting characters in their own right. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please like the video. Maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If you have anything to add, either to the franchise itself, to the villains, or to how I've chosen to match them up, or to the results of the matchups, whatever else you want to talk about, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about book-related and literature topics, a link to which you can find in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out, should you choose to. Additionally, I also have a Patreon where I talk about, where I actually don't need to explain what what Patreon is, but I can say that I do have various various possible benefits depending on the level at which you pledge. But that is something I'll leave up to you to discover if you're interested. So yeah, as I said, I already said, I have the main channel for book-related topics. If you're interested in my thoughts on other topics such as TV, movies, video games, and others, well then you can stay on this channel and go through its backlog. And if none of those interest you, then you can go ahead and do whatever you want with the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. Anyway, until next time, I have been the One Take Man.